Mahlengi, are you joking? I mean, really, you've said some really fancy words. You've said that you've looked at inconsistent service delivery. Do you not live in the same South Africa that I live in?
I do.
The service delivery is pathetic. I mean, it's been nothing less than disgusting.
The ANC has a lot of leaders. They are ethical, they are committed to South Africa, they are patriots. The ANC had no proposal of a 2% VAT. That's just a fact.
Should I invest in your country or shouldn't I? How would you answer that particular investor?
That you can go and invest in India or
So
elsewhere.
go somewhere else.
Yes.
In May 2024, South Africa held its 7th general election. And in a massive surprise, the ruling and dominant ANC was taken down from 57% of the national vote all the way down to 40% of the vote. That, of course, created a lot of drama, which led to the formation of a government of national unity. And despite not getting a majority, we still have an ANC president. We still have, by and large, ANC cabinet ministers in most of the important posts. And recently, and we still have many of the legacy ANC laws that have been passed into force. Most notably, the National Health Insurance, the Basic Education Amendment Law, as well as the Expropriation Act. The drama happened when a budget needed to be passed by the ANC finance minister. So ANC have featured heavily in the country and continue to feature heavily in the country. Now, one may ask, what happened in the 30 years that took the ANC from a high point of close on 70% of the vote down to 40% of the vote? And joining us today to come and answer some of the questions and tell us about the road to revival for the ANC is their spokesperson, Bhengu Motsiri. Mahlengi, finally, you are sitting in the seat.
Really, really an absolute privilege. And I'm very thankful for granting us the opportunity to engage with yourself,
Yes.
Mike, and your platform. And also, this is a platform that is going to be the future, if you look at the trends internationally. And so we're grateful for being here, and I am ready to be grilled.
You're going to be grilled. Okay, so let's start where we were. Gave a long introduction about the slide of the ANC, all the way from the high point of 70% in 2004, when the economy was growing at 5%, all the way down to 40% in the last election, where the economy no longer grows, we can't keep the lights on, and service delivery has collapsed. Do you think that is that the end of the show? Do we know exactly why the vote went down to 40%?
We certainly know where the vote went down to 40%. We did a diagnostic assessment of our performance, looking at province by province, region by region, and ward by all the way to all of the wards that we have in our country. And so we've gone through that very difficult exercise of looking at ourselves in order to be able to communicate to South Africans what we believe we've dropped, where we've dropped the ball, but also where we believe there were a number of other issues that impacted on the result related to the ANC. But on the whole, it is our own subjective weaknesses, which we are working very hard to attend to in rebuilding the ANC, in rebuilding our structures from the ground. I mean, we're the only political party in South Africa that has got structures on the ground, VD to VD, wall to wall, all over the country. And so obviously it means that we demobilized our structures through the way in terms of service delivery and uneven and inconsistent patterns of delivery. Where we've done well, we've somehow not sustained it elsewhere. So it's those types of things that we're looking at.
Mahlengi, are you joking? I mean, really, you've said some really fancy words. You've said that you've looked at inconsistent service delivery. Do you not live in the same South Africa that I live in?
I do.
The service delivery is pathetic. I mean, it's been nothing less than disgusting. You know what I mean? It doesn't take a genius to work out why your voters have deserted you. It's not that you need to do some diagnostic. You just have to go to yet another service delivery protest. But yet we never see anybody being held to account.
Well, I live in the same South Africa that you live in, Mike. The same South Africa where today about more than 50 title deeds are being handed over to a community that never knew ownership of a land, including where they lived and their ancestors lived for many years. That did not happen under apartheid.
Yeah, but
if I may,
yeah,
that did not happen under apartheid. I live in the same South Africa that you live in, where early childhood development is now a practical thing. There's a budget allocation, an item in the budget proposal, and I know that we're going to come into a conversation about the budget. One of the key things that makes this budget a people-friendly, pro-poor budget is investing in early childhood development. Now, where there is a problem of sewer in Mfuleni municipality, potholes not being fixed somewhere in Rivonia, Sentin, we must take accountability for that, including not just the ANC. Remember, the ANC is now in many of these hung municipalities that become hung as a consequence of the vote outcome. We must then equally, though, have an engagement with all of those parties that are part of municipalities to maintain service delivery. So when other parties do well, such as what is happening in the city of Tshwane, you won't say that it's the ANC. You would say that it's the Action SA. And we equally ask for the same treatment when we have a discussion about these things. So what are we saying? We're saying that we are taking responsibility for service delivery failures where they've happened and where we have governed.
Okay, so let's turn it around then. Where should we be giving you credit for a well-run municipality or a well-run province or a well-run metro? Give it to me so that I can give you the necessary credit for running one of those places well. Where are you getting unqualified audits?
Oh, no. There's quite a number, by the way. We've got municipalities in Limpopo, Modimule, and many others where we have gotten. You just have to look at the reports of the Auditor General. I don't think it's a general thing. I think it's a general thing in the sense that in a majority of these municipalities have not performed optimally. And we've been the first ones to acknowledge that, Mike.
You've acknowledged it, but you've done nothing about it. Has anybody been held to account? Have you sent anybody to jail?
Well, the ANC is not government.
Sorry?
No, the ANC is not government. Okay. That's a fact. Right. The ANC is a political organization, a mass movement in South Africa. South Africa has a democratically elected government. Opinion makers such as yourselves are always quick to remind us not to conflate party and state. So your question suggests that we must conflate party and state. And I think we don't do that because it's not correct. The Constitution is there, protects government from other non-state actors. We're one of the non-state actors, but we do have our own people deployed in government. We are a majority because despite
You're not a majority.
Despite having achieved a 40% vote outcome, we remain the largest party in the Republic of South Africa. That's the majority I'm referring to.
Yeah, in other words, that's not a majority. A majority means more than 50%.
No, we remain
the largest.
Whichever way we phrase it. The point is, there's no way South Africa can be governed without the African National Congress. Now, our job is to fix these municipalities. We've set up a local government intervention team that is on the ground, literally on the ground. There was an issue, for example, in Machabeng, in the Free State, of sewer. We literally just took 3 hours for people to descend there to fix what they ought to have fixed anyway. And I think the fact that we are coming up with a local government intervention is indicative of the fact that we are mindful of the failures by some of our publicly elected deployees to lead municipalities in a way they ought to be led.
Do you fire them?
We do. We do. I mean, for example, and I will say this, Mike, because I'm quite convicted on it. We have a committee that is led by the former Secretary General Kgalema Motlanthe, known as the Electoral Committee of the ANC. The committee works very hard to, right now, they're literally keeping a hawk's eye about which municipality or which leader in the municipality, how they're conducting themselves, how they're deporting themselves, and also, more importantly, how they are implementing the IDP, the Integrated Development Plan of a municipality. And these people are going to be assessed on the basis of that going forward, Mike, now that we have a very strong performance and accountability framework. Now, one of the things that as we prepare for the next election, we're going to be having a very stringent criteria for who becomes a councillor candidate of the African National Congress. Their performance is going to come under scrutiny as part of making improvements in the caliber and the competence of those that sit in municipalities and discharge their responsibilities. That forms part of the ANC's serious organizational renewal program. You asked a question about arrests. I read up on the work that's being done by the SIU and the work that's being done by the NPA. Honestly, look at the financial year. Just go into your records and have a look at the past financial year. At some point, somewhere around October, we had about 153 prosecutions and asset forfeitures by the SIU. So when South Africans ask the question, are wrongdoers being punished? Really, you need to go into that report of the SIU, the proclamations made by the SIU, signed off by the president of the country. You also have to look at the report. There's a report that was released late last year, that speaks to by the presidency, that speaks to the interventions that have been made and the successes that have been recorded in fighting corruption. And that includes arrests. That includes a whole lot of things.
But let's talk more about the optics here, right? We had the Zondo Commission. Great cost, great fanfare. 5 volumes emerge. Let's take for instance, the example of somebody like Nomvula Mokonyane. Clearly, a government official that drives an Aston Martin. You don't have to be the best detective in the world to work out that can't be right, okay? Not only is she named and shamed in a whole lot of ways, but yet she's on your executive. She, in fact, is in one of the top positions within your party. Are you serious about corruption?
Well, the ANC is very much serious about corruption.
How can you then have a person like that?
Well, the ANC also has to follow procedure, like any other organization. I would imagine if there was a J.P. Smith in the Western Cape and found by the DA through public participation inquiries, which are currently underway, that was found to be at odds with the law. The DA would have to look at its policies first before also looking externally into what the legal and the law enforcement environment provides for in a case of J.P. Smith. And I'm not saying he's guilty, but I'm saying he's a suspect in wrongdoing. Equally, the African National Congress follows procedures to be able to establish if there's any veracity, for example, to this claim that Mike has stolen this mug from the studio. And I can come here and speak about Nomvula Mokonyane. I can come here and speak about the principles that ANC is applying. One of the successes of the fight against corruption has been the step aside rule of the ANC, where the ANC has actually basically released people to focus on their own cases and not bring the ANC into disrepute. That continues to happen. And we have, and I can give you figures about several individuals who've been subjected to the step aside rule. But the Constitution continues to say, of course, if you are acquitted, then you come back and continue your role as a leader of the ANC or a member of the ANC. So that is being done. And the idea that that must not be spoken about as though nothing is being done is an idea that we are rebutting.
But the step aside seems to be quite factionally applied.
In what way?
In that there's a big question mark around the president himself. Right? Should he not be stepping aside until that case has played its way through the court?
The step aside rule, Mike, says that if you've been charged by a court of law, you need to step aside. He's not been charged by a court of law. There have been investigations, and the investigations that I know of, from the public protector all the way to a number of other, independent legal assurance providers, the president has not been charged. There's no basis for even entertaining an idea that he must step aside.
Okay, I don't think we're going to make a lot of progress on this line.
Actually, I think we should make a progress on this line.
Please, I'd love to.
And this is the point I'm putting across here, is that despite what South Africans, sections of South Africans, may be looking into the ANC and believing that it's the same old, I'm putting across a perspective that says no.
Okay.
Because you can just go and look at how people are being disciplined. We are acting on disciplinary cases, including cases before the Integrity Commission that have been with the ANC for 2 to 3 years. They've all been cleared, those cases.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the arms deal where massive amounts of public money was stolen. I'm looking at state capture where we had a whole commission. I'm looking at all of those things, and the only person I ever saw go into jail was Tony Yengeni, and he was taken in shoulder high by Baleka Mbete, Speaker of Parliament at the time, right? So I'm saying this commitment that you claim to have for clean governance, right? It may happen to some, councillor who wasn't very smart in some backwater, right? But doesn't apply to the senior leaders of the ANC. And this is why your vote is sitting at 40%. Well,
are you suggesting, therefore, that there needs to be witch hunt? Because remember, let's get to the granular detail of things. And indeed, I mean, South African voters that have always voted the ANC, we had a low voter turnout because they were disenchanted about a number of things, and correctly so. But I just want to really engage you on the examples that you've used. The state capture report had findings. The ANC acted on the findings of the state capture report. For example, and one of the decisions that the ANC took was that anyone that has been found of wrongdoing, according to the state capture report, must appear before the Zondo Commission and the ANC Integrity Commission, and that failure to do so will result in disciplinary charges. I don't know what else the ANC ought to be doing to respond to that, because the second aspect of it, Mike, you are talking about what must be done by law enforcement and judicial institutions in our country. If there are leaders of the ANC that must be subjected to all of that, whether it was the Guptas, whether it was the state capture report, those leaders of the ANC who have to take the flak are taking the flak. Example is Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngagula, who had to be put on step aside. She's currently in court fighting for herself. And that is what the policy of the ANC is. We released a number of other people to go and do exactly that. But I must also stress that the ANC has a lot of leaders. They are ethical, they are committed to South Africa, they are patriots.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, those ethical leaders, when you know of those names, please put them down in the comments below. because I'm struggling to identify them. And let's understand here, Mahlengi, what the public knows and what comes out in the election is that many of these bodies that that are put there to hold these kind of processes to account are run by deployed cadres, right? We saw under the Jacob Zuma administration the hollowing out of the police force, the hollowing out of the justice system. We see, a law environment, legal environment that is underfunded, right? While you play petty politics with the Justice Ministry in moving one person with a question mark from one place to another, but you've got paper-based documentation for legal matters in this day and age. We see the hollowing out. We see the fact that you say, well, come and arrest us. If they've got a case, bring the case. Well, it's become almost impossible to bring the case because under the stewardship of the ANC, that very important legal and justice system has been brought to its knees on purpose. We heard so, right? There's been books written about it, right? We've got many of them here. To me, it looks like exactly the same. I don't know if you ever watch professional wrestling, but there's usually a good guy and a bad guy, right? Mm. And then the bad guy gets the good guy like this, and the referee's behind him, and he pokes him in the eyes, and the crowd's going mad because the bad guy's poking the good guy in the eye. And he turns around like butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. You know what I mean? Mm. You're doing exactly the same thing. You guys are the bad guys. You are the guys that have hollowed out the legal system.
Mm. Well, I think that South Africa's constitutional democracy, Mike, you're throwing in a lot of swipes.
Yeah.
And the swipes are also very generalized. They are not speaking to the practical reality of things.
Yeah, just keep on poking in the eyes.
Yeah, so, I do say that one of the strong things about South Africa's constitutionalism and our constitutional democracy is that it protects judicial institutions from anyone that seeks to interfere with them. And when the courts make decisions, the decisions of the court have to be respected. When the courts rule against the ANC, which happens now and then, including recently on they ruled against government in this instance, but a government that is led by the ANC on the employment equity. I'll be very interested to hear what your perspectives are on those issues, since you believe that the problem in South Africa is an ANC problem. Mm. I'm very keen to hear what you have to say about forces that are arrayed against transformation.
Okay.
But back to your question, judicial institutions are independent. Law enforcement institutions are run by politicians at the top, in the form of Senzo Mchunu, as an example. But do tell me,
yes, if
you look at the record of the hawks, particularly in the past 12 months, not the hawks of about 3 years ago or 4 years ago, in the past 12 months, a number of arrests of senior people, including senior leaders of the ANC. But not only those, senior people, including some of the political leaders from other political parties. The hawks are setting an example. We need to support them. And the cynicism that is palpable in this conversation is not helpful. Yeah. Because there are South Africans who are working very hard to fix our country. And I think that, if you were to say all politicians are corrupt, my family will jump and say, not my mother, because I'm not. I literally live my life according to a particular set family standard, not even ANC standard, but even within the ANC. You can go to the ANC people, they will tell you that, they will tell you that there are people who don't do that. So, and similarly, you have many parties, from the DA to EFF, to MK, to all of those. I won't even bother talking about all of those parties, but I can stay with the DA to give you a sense of the corruption in the DA, which you conveniently don't talk about. The DA runs the city of Tshwane, gets a motion of no confidence because of poor service delivery, and the people of Tshwane vote them out.
And the people didn't vote them out. Sorry, the people didn't vote them out.
Who
There
voted
was,
on?
because we covered that quite extensively from all sides, right?
Yes, who
And
voted them
that
out?
was
The
that was
parties.
moving coalitions, right? We understand that was jumping of ship from one party to another. It wasn't settled at the ballot box. This isn't according to. It's not like there was some referendum held, right? This was coalition movements. That doesn't mean that the people voted them out.
I
Right? And the
find
people
that,
are going to vote again in a few months' time, so we'll see.
I find that combat readiness on your part about what happened in Tshwane quite
Only because I've had Herman Mashaba.
quite interesting, because there's been many motions of no confidence in many other municipalities. Yes. I would hope that you would actually apply that same analysis, and I will let me stay with the issue of Tshwane and why I use that example.
Okay, and I'm going to fight back as to why I'm strident on this issue.
Yeah, no, it's fine, because when I say the people, remember, political parties represent the people, and they represent voters, and voters are the people. And I was raising that in that context. But we're not there.
No, but let me tell you why.
We don't need a referendum to be able to refer.
I had Nasipi Moya, the mayor of Pretoria, who was the deputy mayor in the so-called
at the time,
right? And I asked her 3 times. People actually complained, saying, why do you keep on asking her? Saying, was there corruption in the previous administration that you were part of? And she said, absolutely not. Right, so I'm saying, you can say they were outmaneuvered, that's fine. But let's be careful when we say corruption, because I had Herman Mashaba here, and 2 weeks before he was telling us what a great coalition it was. Suddenly it was a bad coalition. So I'm saying that's politics, and I get it. But let's move on to the most important part.
No, before that, Mike,
yes.
I have to really take you on this. When a mayor is Salim Simang, I can't speak for Nasipi. She's from Action SA. Yes. I do think she's a good mayor.
I think so too.
I can't speak about that. But when a DA mayor, Salim Simang, employs a matric to a chief of staff position, employs a bouncer to a senior position with no qualifications. I don't know, maybe the qualifications are boxing or something. When that happens, that is corruption. Corruption does not become another thing when it's done by others and not the ANC. There was a lady by the name of Mariki, I just said, the surname escapes me, completely unqualified into a senior role in the city of Tshwane.
So we're going to compare.
There are countless examples that we can use, and I'm not in the business of comparing.
You're comparing one metropolitan versus the country.
Well,
that's what you're saying.
We can go to the Western Cape.
Yes,
if you want us to go, because
I think the voters have just recently decided.
Because my concern in this conversation is lack of consistency in application of principle by opinion makers such as yourself.
Yes.
Look at where the Democratic Alliance governs. You go to the Western Cape. Go and do a detailed analysis of the demographic makeup of the civil service there, and tell me whether there's transformation.
Let's talk about the
legislature.
Very issue. Let's talk about transformation. You mentioned employment equity. So what we have at the moment, the biggest problem in South Africa, as far as I can see, when people complain and they say, what are you unhappy about? They're unhappy about the economy, jobs, service delivery. I don't know where people are complaining about transformation. What we have is an economy that's not growing, right?
That's a very conservative view, to say people are not complaining about transformation.
Right.
People are actually not complaining. People are deserving equal opportunity.
And what stops them from getting equal opportunity?
Because the apartheid patterns continue to persist. They can never be reversed after only 30 years. So to be able to secure a job and to be able to access higher education as a young person in Katlehong with maybe parents that are not even working is an extra effort than the child that lives in Sandhurst.
Okay, so let's
Simple.
talk about the great performance, and we're just going to get something up on the screen, which is the national debt clock.
Okay.
Right, which is, that thing goes up at about 6,000 Rand per second. South Africa pays 1 million Rand worth of interest, more than 1 million Rand 1 billion Rand, not million, 1 billion Rand of interest every day. Right. Now,
Did you say every second or every day?
Second it goes up by 6,000 Rand. That's just our national debt. Right. We've had the debacle around the budget where you're telling me it's pro-poor. It's pro-poor where your Minister of Finance wanted to increase VAT by 2 percentage points.
Well, those are budget proposals that came from National Treasury. I think South Africans are very well aware of the independence or semi-autonomy of National Treasury. These are officials, these are economists, these are financiers, these are people these are budget officers, these are people who look at the growth pattern, who look at a number of other things that South Africa is facing, and also then determine what a budget proposal that the minister must present. That is what the minister presented. It's not the ANC. And I must also remind you, it was ANC ministers, when this was first presented in cabinet, who opposed it.
Are you joking?
I'm not
or
joking.
Do you seriously want me or our viewers to agree with you? Do you really think we are that gullible that you are saying that your minister went rogue and the ANC and their ministers never supported him?
I'm not saying that our minister went rogue. I'm saying that the minister presented an option of a budget proposal in line with the work and the mandate of finance. But I'm disputing, and I will continue to do so until I stop doing this work. The ANC had no proposal of a 2% VAT. That's just a fact.
Okay, so then the only conclusion we can have is that he went rogue.
And the dominant narrative will not change that fact.
Okay, so then if he didn't go, either he went rogue or some official slipped this in, or there's duplicitous somewhere, right? In which case, why not remove him?
It's not the first time that finance ministers, Trevor Manuel used to do that a lot. Under Mandela and others, Tito Mboweni, and so on, the late Tito Mboweni. There's nothing new about it. But what we must acknowledge as the ANC is that the budget is now being managed, the budget making process is now happening under the conditions of a government of national unity and more political parties in parliament, and therefore, South Africans are very interested in participating in the budget making process.
Now, I had Dr. Mark Burke from the Democratic Alliance, who sits in that portfolio committee, who says that, and I've had Songezo Zibi and Musi Maimane, so this is coming out of 3 members of that, saying that the minister and the finance committee won't entertain the suggestions of the other parties.
I'm not certain that Musi Maimane or Songezo Zibi said so. It's very strange.
I've got it on record.
Well, it's strange to me because the same 2 gentlemen made submissions to the Minister of Finance, and those submissions in terms of when the Parliament decided to pass a resolution that says we are not going to accept this, and we are giving the minister 30 days to receive submissions from all parties and act on those submissions or respond to those submissions, and then table a budget proposal that is being tabled on the 21st of May. Now, I know Rise Mzansi and Bosa made substantive proposals to the minister. I also know that on record, Songezo Zibi has been very emphatic about the need to protect the work of Treasury and to allow Treasury to think about what is the best course of action, which is what they did. And that is why I'm saying to reduce this thing to Enoch Godongwan is insufficient. It's actually quite a lazy thinking approach, because we must discuss the role of Treasury as a whole.
You did that, not me. I'm
No,
saying
no,
you
you
did that
did.
because you said we didn't agree with this. Therefore, somebody must have done it.
No.
He's
no,
not just going to say, oh, damn,
no.
there's 2%.
The
Let's just do it.
ANC is allowed to disagree with government.
Okay.
It's allowed. It's part of our tradition.
Or your GNU partners allowed
Because
to.
it's in line with what South Africa expects, lack of conflation of party and state.
So are the,
Even when a deployee of ours pronounces on a matter that we believe is not in the best interest of South Africans, the ANC is, would call on that deployee to reverse that thing or something of the kind.
give me an example.
Oh, shucks. I mean, you want me to think about it at the top of my head?
I'm just saying, I've never seen the ANC not be unified behind an ANC minister.
No.
Good, bad, or ugly.
Well, because we have robust conversations, they're often public, but a lot of robustness in the ANC. That is why you know so much about the ANC than you may possibly know about other parties. There's lots of secrecy about the operations of political parties in this country. And should the ANC for being as transparent as possible. That is why you would know that somebody has been suspended, that there are 15 cases of the Integrity Commission where the following people are impacted on. All of the parties have got disciplinary processes, but you'll never know anything about that. I think we welcome that because we continue to say, we continue to be the leader of society. But when we embark on renewal initiatives, and you decide to turn a blind eye to the renewal work that we're doing. Currently, we're running all over the country, wall to wall, running foundation calls on politics for all our members.
Right.
And that's one of the things that we're doing. Secondly, we have an integrity commission. We're the only party in South Africa that has an integrity commission.
You're possibly the only party that needs one.
Well, no. The idea from you that there are no corrupt elements in other parties.
I didn't say that. Let's talk about your party.
Well, it's an inference. And I think it's a sad one. Because
call it sad. I've got evidence on my side.
Yeah,
you don't.
because there's I do have lots of evidence of corruption in the DA.
Yeah.
I have evidence galore, including in KZN, Umgeni.
Right.
So this idea that the corruption is only in the ANC, there's no way we can agree with that analysis. What we can agree on is the fact that we are doing a lot of work to root out
So the fact
corruption.
that there may be corruption in other parties, that gives you a blank check to go ahead with corruption.
No, I
Is
didn't.
that what?
No,
Because that's what you're implying.
that's not what we're saying.
Well, then don't say it. Then let's deal with the ANC.
Yeah, no, let's deal with the ANC. I'm not saying what you're saying. I'm saying that opine on the renewal work we are doing.
No, I'll opine on the stuff that is renewed. I've been hearing renewal for 20 years.
No,
right?
well,
And I haven't.
that is,
at some point, somebody's got to see something renewed.
Yeah, but
surely.
Mike, give me a chance, to speak about the renewal work. The ANC is embarking on the organizational renewal exercise. And there are several markings of the success of the renewal project, particularly since the 55th National Conference, which took place in December 2022, where President Ramaphosa was elected for the second term. And we walked away with a decision that we're going to renew the organization, we're going to rebuild the organization, and we're going to stamp out corruption from within our ranks. We're going to make sure that those that have acted outside of the code of conduct of the ANC and the constitution are punished, and they take consequences. Thirdly, and therefore,
every single ANC meeting has said exactly the same thing.
Yeah, well, has every single ANC meeting produced evidence of the work that's being done by SIU to capture and deal, law enforcement, deal with those people that have done this, some of them doing this on their own, some of them doing it in the name of the ANC. We've acted on those things. We continue to act on those things. The fact that you don't want to focus on them does not make them go away. And then, of course, political education forms part of the renewal work. the launch of the new membership system focuses on the renewal work, where people really can join the ANC out of their own volition, and they're not gate-kept or they're not captured by anyone. They basically vote, they enroll as members of the ANC on their own. That forms part of our renewal efforts. Our renewal efforts, of course, also include having a strong parliamentary caucus that works, that also advances our election manifesto, but that also advances a multi-party democracy in line with the kind of constitutional democracy that South Africa has. Those are just some of the things we're doing to get right.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Not that stuff we're going to do. That's like me saying I'm going to clean the garage. I say that regularly. You know what I mean? But let's talk about the stuff that really matters. Is the ANC getting ready to be just another political party, and perhaps not even the biggest one?
The ANC is getting ready to reclaim its space in society.
Okay, and if it doesn't?
We are going to reclaim our space in society because South Africans don't have an alternative apart from and they believe in the ANC, in the principles, the policies of the ANC.
Well, 60% didn't believe in the ANC.
Well, they look at the voter turnout. A number of
I can only talk about people that were there.
Yeah, but
and I know that 60% of those voters chose not to.
That's okay, Mike. The point I'm advancing is that we are working hard to reclaim our space. We're working very hard to demonstrate successes in service delivery, particularly in a number of areas where service delivery is not happening and we are communicating badly or less. So we're going to work hard to ensure that our deployees communicate better and communicate more and actively in relation to areas where they are deployed and where work is happening.
Okay.
I'm using an example of a week or so ago, a minister goes and hands out title deeds. And title deeds are, a source of identity, a source of ownership, and a source of dignity to those people. But those things go unnoticed. So
after 30 years, one would have imagined it would have happened in year 1 or year 2.
No.
But anyway, we are.
No. But title deeds don't get handed out as if you're handing out
T-shirts.
T-shirts. Yeah, you can use T-shirts or money. Just throw it around. Title deeds follow a very diligent
They take 30 years?
process. Title deeds have been handed over in the first year of democracy. Mike.
Why is it not done more
so
aggressively?
You can't say it's happened after 30 years. It doesn't work that way. The title deeds program people have been handed out title deeds since the dawn of democracy.
Yes, but
you have to go to your records in the human settlements environment to track the title deeds program. It's not after 30 years, but I'm giving you a sense that continually people are being assisted to regain their dignity by having title deeds over properties they've been occupying for, even their parents occupying. But you also are not talking about the fact that title deeds are such a big deal. You're not talking about causality. You're not talking about what got us here.
Are we going to go back?
And you're very keen that we must forget about the legacies.
I'm not going to forget about anything. I am saying let's do what's best with what we got right now.
But
what I do want to challenge want to ask is, you're handing out title deeds now, right? And it's a great achievement and something that I applaud. I can't tell you how happy I am about it. But just as you do that, you ram through an expropriation act which devalues those title deeds, which makes those title deeds moot. Okay, because
how is that?
Because
which provision in the act does that?
Public interest. So at any stage you could decide it's in the public interest that somebody owns this studio, right? Then there's a procedure. But hey, if it wasn't an expropriation act, you probably wouldn't have called it an expropriation act. Do you understand what I mean? I'm saying let's for once, I applaud you, much like I applaud the only other honest politician I heard recently, which was Dada Marero, the mayor of Johannesburg, who said he was going to do nothing and he's done nothing. So I applaud honesty, and I applaud the people that concocted the Expropriation Act for being honest as to what it is. Now you have to send emissaries all over the world to say this thing we've called an Expropriation Act, in fact, isn't an Expropriation Act, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But anyway, you have undermined any ownership of any kind of property in this country by passing that act. It's a complete economic killer.
That is a figment of your imagination. Read the legislation.
I've read the legislation. I've had experts here talking about the legislation.
Yeah, but you need to read it with intention, not with prejudice.
Okay, so
let me unpack the public interest. I mean, I've listened to you, on this one. Let me unpack the public interest. Very clear. Examples are even made. There's a dilapidated building in the CBD. We need to get student accommodation going with the increasing numbers of students that are accessing higher education, thanks to an ANC-led government that introduced the Tertiary Education Fund for South Africa, TEFSA, in the early 90s, which is a precursor to the NSFAS that we have today. How do I know that thousands and thousands of young people need accommodation? Because the doors of learning and culture, as the Freedom Charter says, have been opened. I know this. I sat on that TEFSA board as a student leader, representing students, which gave birth to the NSFAS. So there's a demand for student accommodation, and there's some dilapidated building in the CBD that can be converted, or in Braamfontein, or somewhere in Brixton. As you see, a lot of development is happening in that environment, changing the spatial patterns in the space. There is absolutely nothing dodgy about the Expropriation Act.
No, under those circumstances.
We have explained it.
Under those circumstances, right?
The
I fully agree with you.
Public interest refers exactly to things like those.
I fully agree with you.
There is no public interest that says you'll just go and grab Makulu's house and take it.
If you decide it's in the public interest?
You would.
Why not?
Because there
Why
are.
not?
No.
Well, who decides what is dilapidated? What is the yardstick for dilapidated?
No, you are basically on a trajectory to pursue the argument of AfriForum and Solidarity and the DA. And that argument is...
Do you want to call the Ku Klux Klan? Keep going, Mahlengi.
No,
I mean, I don't know. You've obviously got an agenda here.
No, I don't have any agenda. Okay. My agenda is the ANC and communicating the message of the ANC, which is known to South Africa.
Right.
But you are saying exactly the things that they've been saying. I've been in debates on this issue.
And they're saying it because
and they go to the United States. You talked about the US people going to United States. I thought I should react to that in line with your line of questioning. They went to the US and said that basically farms, land, properties are going to be seized under the Expropriation Act. A total misrepresentation of that piece of legislation.
Are you
the
saying
public interest clause is not aimed at destabilizing society, cohesion. It's aimed at making sure that the land is available for the state for the purposes of development.
But now that's if you were in charge, right? But what happens if Jacob Zuma's in charge? Do you understand what I mean? Suddenly public interest becomes a different question. So let's just imagine.
Laws are laws.
No, this is a law that's open to interpretation.
Well, you just used a bad example, Jacob Zuma. Maybe you should use a more saner example.
I think I'm using that as an opposite example. Because he's the kind of, that's the kind of person that we have to write laws for.
Yeah,
right?
It could very well, by the way, be another, another right-wing extremism.
Whoever, exactly. Yes, therefore don't give them bad laws. Now,
think about that, the type that is pursuing. And I wonder if you'll bring them to your show to talk about the type that is creating an Orania and is seeking to extend the Orania to another Kleinfontein, which another new Orania, and basically people who are separatists.
Yeah, bad laws.
It's not about the law.
Well, you're saying what they're doing is illegal.
It's wrong.
Is it illegal?
No.
Okay, there's a difference now between wrong and illegal, and you're saying now we can make a call.
Well, I struggle, actually. I actually struggle with your discourse Because the discourse seems to think that the problems in South Africa are only limited to the wrongs of the African National Congress. The African National Congress has always considered the things that we failed to do correctly and how we've disappointed a lot of our people and in general the people of South Africa. Okay. You can go through so much of that publication, including our president says this regularly, but he says we are coming back, and we are coming back on an ethical footing, which is why I keep reminding you that this idea that ANC people are cadres and are corrupt, all of them, is very wrong.
Okay, so let's do a little exercise, you and I, right? Mm-hmm. I hand over your phone number because I've got your number to an international investor. They contact you. They say, I am Mr. Big Shot from some country and I want to open a multi-billion-dollar factory in South Africa. I'm going to buy this land, which I've earmarked. I'm going to build a big factory, right? I'm going to employ thousands of people. But I need to know that nobody, not just you, but nobody could at some stage say, in the public interest, we might just want your big factory and your intellectual property. Can you guarantee me that you can't have it? Then he says, I'm going to bring in a lot of specialists, but I see that there's an employment equity tick box exercise, right, where I am being told who to hire, right? And I run companies all over the world, and nowhere am I told who I must hire. Should I invest in your country or shouldn't I? How would you answer that particular investor?
That you can go and invest in India or elsewhere.
So go somewhere else.
Yes.
Okay. So, well, we can see why we've got a growth rate of 0.5, 0.6%.
No,
okay. I think that's the.
No,
you've joined Dada Marrero as the other honest politician because at least you've answered the question honestly.
If you are coming and now I see you're bidding for Starlink by Elon Musk.
I am.
You are. That's the anecdote that you're utilizing is that of the Starlink issue with Elon Musk. Okay, I'm saying here that anyone who wants to come and invest in South Africa must abide by the South African Constitution and the laws of the country. Okay. Any self-respecting country does that.
Okay.
That's not unique to an ANC-led government of national unity. It's just what it is.
And therefore, with that, by that same logic, we must just be happy with no growth, economic growth in the country, because that's how it's manifested.
We must have growth.
Where's it going to come from?
And specifically inclusive.
Where's it going to come from?
Inclusive economic growth.
Where's it going to come from?
It's going to come from infrastructure development. Read the entire budget.
We've read the
Mike.
budget.
You've not. You've not read. Let me unpack the budget for you. Give me a minute to break it down for you because the obsession with the VAT issue is blinding, I think, your perspective. That budget is the most developmental budget you can ever find in South Africa. One, I'm now speaking about the expenditure side of the budget. The budget provides for increased access to education, particularly early childhood development. There are allocations made in that respect, which amounts to effective practical implementation of the Bella Act that you and the people that pursue this narrative believe that the Bella Act is problematic, which is aimed at strengthening access to early childhood development. And people are jumping up and down saying the Afrikaans language is going to be undermined by this Bella Act, and which were proved to be totally incorrect. Secondly, the budget aims at attracting and employing many, many health workers in order to address the shortages in our health system so that we can ensure that our people have access to health care in line with the dictates of the Constitution. Thirdly, there's been a lot of debate and unhappiness in the public discourse about the fact that we now have unemployed doctors. They qualify, They go and do community service. Post-community service, they don't have nothing to do. This budget allocates a budget to employ about 800 doctors. That's significant in the context of a 65 million population of South Africa. Then the budget continues to outline a number of infrastructure projects in the rail sector, in the ports, and elsewhere, in order to grow and secure the logistics and distribution environment in the country, so that it's easy to do business between here and Zambia, or between here and China, or wherever the case may be. Those infrastructure development projects are going to yield a lot of employment if executed to the T. And these are capital projects. And these projects, I mean, most of them have already been scoped. There are plans around them. And the idea that those are not going to be employment creating projects is obviously, that's a fallacy that is, those that are cynical will talk about that. Then I spoke about the logistics environment. Then, of course, there's a social spending side of things, which is ensuring that the social wage, people have got access to that. I know how you probably feel about grants, but South Africa still needs grants because of the levels of poverty and incomes inequality. And of course, much of what is in that budget speaks to the need for partnership, compacting between government and business and the markets, I would say, and business, because the private sector investment into the work that is driven by government is very crucial. And I think that there is a big swell of support for the work of government in the private sector, but much more can still be done to be able to also grow and have a job creating environment. The argument that our opponents advance is that it's not the job of government to create jobs. It's the responsibility of the private sector. And we always say it is a responsibility of all actors in the space. The private sector, of course, have got a burden of responsibility in as far as that is concerned.
So you're saying what you've just said is any different to any other budget that the ANC has passed for the last 30 years? When we've got a bloated bureaucracy, we've got 75 ministers and deputy cabinet ministers. We keep going with that. We've got 700 state-owned companies that are sucking the blood out of the South African economy. That's okay. We're going to keep that. Yeah. Despite the fact that...
We're not saying that. We're not saying that. Well, we're not saying that.
I heard your Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, says, don't ask us to cut. We are not a party that cuts. Those were his very words, as erudite as normal. Right? So in other words, you are saying this is a developmental budget because you're going to try and get more money from poor people through VAT increases, right? Not use it to do the job you're meant to do in the first place. And then, but the bloat is going to carry on, and we're going to have 21 seaters. We're going to have 700 state-owned companies. We're going to have Joburg City buying from Rand Water, who buys from this other organization. Everybody in fancy offices. That must just stay.
No, there's absolutely nothing of the accusation you're labeling is true. If you look at the budget, if you looked at the budget speech that was aborted, all of those things are covered about spending reviews and by National Treasury, which are ongoing to look at creating efficiencies in government. There is a process that is underway of looking at creating efficiencies in government, both in terms of all of these things that you're outlining. It's contained there in the budget proposal. So if you're speaking about, for example, the revenue side of the budget, which you didn't give me a chance to speak to that. The revenue side of the budget, to try and ensure that we create efficiencies that can enable us to free up the money so that we can do more to finance the expenditure that is much needed, and also stimulate the economy through some of these capital projects. So there is nothing in what I've said that affirms what you are saying. Absolutely nothing. I was just addressing the issue of what the budget funds. And the sticking point was what are the alternative revenue sources that can be employed in order to ensure that we don't have a VAT hike, which is what has happened. The budget is going to be presented on the 21st of May, and it's going to be passed by the House. We're confident of that. And then South Africans will then have a national budget that they monitor its implementation, they monitor. And in fact, this budget making process has really shown a spotlight on the budget making process that otherwise used to just be rammed through without a sufficient public conversation. And yes. I think we believe that it bodes well for democracy.
As we close off, I want to ask you, from your perspective, is the government of national unity in its current form going to last?
I am not going to be a fortune teller in this conversation, but what I can say is that the African National Congress did set up the government of national unity, did develop the statement of intent, did invite all parties to the government of national unity. And those parties that agreed, they did come, and hence the GNU was set up. Approached all of them, including those that were not interested in being part of the GNU. And most of them were not interested because they did not want to work with the DA, with their racist and right-wing policies, including anti-transformation policies.
So do you want to work with the DA?
Well, I would say that the ANC set up the government of national unity, decided to agree to work with the DA.
Why?
In the interest.
Why, if they're racist and they're anti-transformation, why would you want to work with them?
Because it is in the national interest.
But then why? Then surely the other point then is to include them in the decision-making process.
They are included in the decision-making process. When you hear John Steenhuisen saying, we want to meet with we basically are not going to support the VAT issue because we want to discuss power sharing with the ANC in the GNU. For me, it's a mystery because power is being shared as we speak. The DA has a minister in Home Affairs, a very strategic environment, and the minister is milking years and years of hard work by ANC-led ministers, and now that are being presented as it's not possible that in 9 months you can roll out the digitization and all of those things. Those things were done by Aaron Muzwaledi and others, but I'm not there. I want to really indicate that this lie that the DA opposed VAT increase in the interest of South African people and the poor is a painful joke.
Okay, so
why? No, let me explain why I'm saying so. The DA was prepared to support the VAT increase if their demands were met, certain demands were met, one of which was to have a say in our foreign policy, another of which was a devolution of powers, including handing over the port, control of that, those are functions, are national functions according to the Constitution, which included including the reversal of the Expropriation Act, which you passionately spoke about. They were prepared to support the VAT increase because they were saying, well, actually, we do need more revenue, and this is going to help the economy. They only went to court when the ANC refused to accede to their demands, which are not budget-related demands, but are political demands.
So why don't you rather go into coalition with your former members? You know, the one was an ex-leader of your party, the other was ex-leader of your youth league. Why not put the band back together again?
Well, the ANC doesn't work in that fashion. I think the ANC has got, I would say, leadership, the burden of leadership, to look at what is the best interest of South Africa. But also just at an intellectual level.
Sorry, this was the ANC that elected Jacob Zuma as the president in the best interest of South Africa. Is that right?
Yeah, but Jacob Zuma is not ANC.
Okay, but he was at the time.
He was.
I'm just questioning the process here.
He was. I would take it back to you to say every political party has had people who come in and get out. And some of them are pronouncing themselves in other parties. So when the DA is screaming, Herman is speaking. There's nothing that is unusual about people who defect or who form splinter parties in a healthy democracy, by the way.
But now he has said that he wants to fix the ANC. That's his mission of starting MK.
Well, you are moving, like sort of shifting goalposts. You were talking about he was our leader, he was our member, and so on. I'm explaining that a healthy democracy will always have that. A healthy democracy. When he disagrees with the ANC or how the ANC disciplines him, because the ANC disciplined him, you don't affirm the ANC for disciplining him. You say, why don't you work with your former person because he's a person that's in conflict with the law as far as we are concerned. And I just find that approach of your line of questioning to be quite problematic. But we will respond. We will continue to come here and speak and debate issues for the sake of the nation and look at the issues that affect the state of the nation, including the geopolitical situation.
Which we never really got time to talk about.
I know.
But Mahlengi, you have been very, very generous with your time and answering questions. We do sadly have to let these people go back to work that are watching us. There's only a handful of people working, and I'm sure they're watching. Some of them are watching this. So let them go back to that. But really, I want to thank you for coming on. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And for the robust discussions. To everybody, I hope that Mahlengi has shown you that the ANC are serious about renewal. This isn't like before. This time they're serious about renewal. This time they're serious about economic growth. This time they're serious about holding people to account and delivering services. So there you've got it. And I'm sure that's going to boost their share of the vote well beyond the 50% level in the next general election. If you're convinced, let us know in the comments below. But Mahlengi, thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure having you here. To everybody that joined us, we want to thank Pace Car Rental.
And thank you very much also for managing platforms of this nature. Well, we have to be a talking nation and a doing nation. And we're accountable. And when we're called out also, and rightfully so, we must accept. It's just that we are not going to accept being bullied as well. And I'm not suggesting that you are bullying, but
I'm a big bully.
No, I'm suggesting that when narratives are peddled, even when we're doing something about our weaknesses, we will always speak. But thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, and thank you to Pace for sponsoring us. Thank you to you for watching. Please click that bell icon, subscribe to the channel. We are growing. Let's get it even bigger. Thank you all. We'll see you again on the State of the Nation. Thank you, Mahlengi.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.